You ever notice something weird about certain people? They walk into a room. Instant download. They feel the tension between those two friends. The sadness hiding behind that smile. Everyone says this is a gift, right? This ability to see what others miss. But here's what I want to share with you today. This clear seeing. It might be the most challenging thing you'll ever carry. Now I'm not talking about physical danger. I'm talking about something much deeper. The challenge of becoming so aware that you can no longer join in the beautiful sleep that lets most people live peacefully. Have you ever watched people at a gathering? Really observed them. They're like actors in a play. Everyone knows their part without being told. Someone asks how you are. You say, fine. Both of you accept this complete lie as truth. You compliment the host. You laugh at unfunny jokes. You nod at stories you've heard before. It's like everyone agreed to stay shallow. Keep things pleasant. Don't look too deep. But then there's you, the one who sees through all of it. You notice the woman who flinches when her husband speaks. You sense the friend who's drowning in loneliness, despite being surrounded by people. You feel anxiety moving through the room like water. And here's where it gets difficult. Once you see these things, you can't unsee them. And your presence becomes a mirror others can't stand to look into. Let me explain what I mean. When you see clearly, when you notice the hidden currents beneath social interaction, you're pointing to what everyone agreed to ignore. And people don't appreciate this. Not because they're bad, but because your clarity threatens the structure that lets them function. Think of society like a theater performance. Everyone has their role. The successful businessman, the devoted mother, the reliable friend. These are costumes we wear. The play works beautifully when everyone stays in character. But you, with your penetrating awareness, you're like someone who stands up mid-performance and shouts. That's just an actor pretending. You can imagine how welcome that makes you. If this resonates with you, join our community of those learning to see with wisdom. Subscribe to walk this path of conscious awareness together. The first challenge is isolation, not ordinary loneliness, something deeper. The isolation of living in a completely different reality from everyone around you. You're speaking a language nobody understands, seeing a world nobody else can see. The irony, the clearer you perceive, the more alone you become. I knew someone once, let's call her Sarah. She could read people instantly, walk into any room and immediately sense who was authentic, who was performing, who was in pain, who was hiding something. Know what happened? She lost every close relationship, not because she was cruel, simply because people felt exposed around her. They couldn't keep their comfortable masks on. Her friends would say, "You're too intense. You read into everything. Can't you just relax?" But she couldn't. Because seeing clearly isn't something you switch on and off. It's like asking someone who can hear to ignore sound. Once you develop this awareness, it's always there, always operating, always showing you what others prefer to keep hidden. Here's the second challenge. When you see the truth, when you notice what's really happening beneath the surface, you face a terrible choice. Speak or stay silent. If you speak, you risk attack. Usually psychological. You'll be called negative, overly sensitive, a troublemaker. You'll be accused of creating problems that don't exist. But if you stay silent, if you swallow what you see and pretend blindness, you lose contact with yourself. Because every time you ignore your perception, every time you accept someone else's version of reality when you know it's false, you tell yourself your experience can't be trusted. Over time, this creates a split in your being. Part of you knows the truth. Another part must pretend not to know it. This is a quiet form of madness. I remember sitting in a meeting once, everyone congratulating themselves on a project's success. I could see clear as day the whole thing was about to collapse. The signs were everywhere. Forced enthusiasm, avoided topics, eyes sliding away from difficult questions. When I gently suggested we examine some concerning patterns, I met hostility. Not disagreement, pure defensive hostility. This brings us to the third challenge, the most dangerous one. When you see clearly and others don't want to see, They often turn their anger on you, not consciously. They won't decide to make you the villain, but unconsciously, they begin treating you as the problem. As if your perception creates the difficulties you're simply observing. This is shooting the messenger. When someone points out the emperor has no clothes, the crowd doesn't thank them. The crowd turns on them for disturbing their comfortable fiction. I've watched this pattern countless times. The clear-seeing person gets labeled too negative, creating drama, unstable, need to lighten up, paranoid, notice something. All these labels suggest the problem lies in the perceiver, not in what's perceived. Brilliant defensive move. If we convince you your perception is flawed, we never have to look at what you're perceiving. But nobody tells you about the fourth challenge, perhaps the most devastating. When you constantly absorb everyone's emotional states and hidden truths, when you perpetually pick up what's unspoken, you lose track of what actually belongs to you. Your feelings mix with everyone else's. You enter a room feeling fine, leave feeling anxious, sad, angry. No idea if these feelings are yours or absorbed from the environment, like a sponge soaking up water. This is exhausting beyond measure. Imagine never knowing which thoughts are your own, never certain whether the emotion you feel belongs to you or the person next to you, like trying to hear your voice in a room full of talking people. Eventually, you might forget what your voice sounds like. People describe this experience the same way. I feel like I'm disappearing. Less and less of me. More and more of everyone else. This isn't poetry. This is real psychological danger. When boundaries between self and other become too thin, when you take in too much without protection, you can lose contact with your own center, your own identity. You might think, this sounds grim. No hope for those who see clearly. Here's where it gets interesting. The danger I'm describing is only dangerous when unconscious, when you don't understand what's happening, when you think you're going mad. But once you understand the process, everything changes, not because the seeing stops, because your relationship to it transforms. You realize you're not required to save everyone from their unconsciousness, not obligated to point out every hidden truth or fix every unacknowledged problem. The truly dangerous thing isn't the seeing itself. It's the compulsion to do something about what you see. The belief that if you perceive a problem, you must solve it. If you sense someone's pain, you must heal it. This is where real trouble begins. You're taking responsibility for things that aren't yours to fix. Imagine you're walking by a river. You notice the water is muddy. You see this clearly. Everyone else passing by doesn't notice or doesn't care. Now you have a choice. Jump in and try clearing it with your hands, stirring up more mud, exhausting yourself in impossible work. Or simply observe the muddy water. Note it might be wise to wait before drinking and continue walking. The water will clear itself when conditions are right. Your frantic stirring won't help. It makes things worse. This is the wisdom that must accompany clear seeing. Understanding that not everything you perceive requires your intervention. But here's the paradox. Once you stop trying to fix everything you see, once you relax into simply being aware without compulsion to change or control, your perception often becomes even clearer. More than that, people feel safer around you. Because you're no longer unconsciously demanding, they see what you see or change to accommodate your awareness. Think about this. When you meet someone who sees you clearly, but doesn't need you to be different, who perceives your struggles without trying to rescue you, who understands your fears without requiring you to face them on their schedule, how does that feel? Like freedom, like you can finally breathe. This is what clear seeing can become when integrated properly. Not a weapon against others' unconsciousness, but a gift you offer through your presence. You see them completely. In that seeing, you allow them to be exactly as they are. This doesn't mean approving everything or pretending problems don't exist. It means stopping making their unconsciousness your personal project. I want to be very clear. I'm not suggesting becoming cold or indifferent, not proposing you stop caring or turn away from genuine suffering. I'm suggesting there's a difference between compassionate awareness and compulsive fixing, between seeing clearly and making yourself responsible for what you see. The danger lies not in perception itself, but in what you do with it. If you use it to separate yourself, feel superior, justify isolation, then yes, it becomes dangerous. If you use it to attack others for blindness, shame them for not seeing, punish them for unconsciousness, then yes, it destroys relationships. But if you can hold your clarity lightly, see without grasping, perceive without controlling, understand without demanding, then your awareness becomes something different. It becomes space where others can gradually wake up at their own pace, in their own time, without force or pressure or judgment. Here's what I've learned watching people with this capacity for clear seeing. The ones who suffer most aren't the ones who see the most. They're the ones who haven't learned to protect themselves while seeing. They absorb everything without filtration, take on every burden they perceive, exhaust themselves trying to wake up a world that isn't ready. The ones who thrive, who use their perception without being destroyed by it, they've learned something crucial: to be in the world, but not of it. They see clearly without being consumed, perceive deeply without losing themselves in others' experiences. They maintain conscious distance, not cold withdrawal, the distance of healthy boundaries. How does one learn this? Starts with spending time alone. Real time, not just physical solitude, psychological solitude. Time where you're not taking in anyone else's emotions or thoughts or problems. Time where you can settle, like muddy water, until you see clearly which feelings are actually yours and which you've been carrying for others. It continues with learning to trust your perception without being controlled by it. Yes, you see your friend's marriage is in trouble. Yes, you sense your colleague is deeply unhappy. Yes, you feel dysfunction in your family system. All this may be true, but the question isn't whether you see correctly. The question is what you'll do with this information. Sometimes, often actually, the wisest thing is nothing at all, except hold space for truth to eventually emerge on its own. This doesn't make you passive, it makes you wise, because you understand people change when they're ready, not when you need them to. Problems get solved when conditions are right, not when you decide it's time. Consciousness develops at its own pace, almost never as fast as you'd like. So here we are at the heart of it. The danger of seeing what others don't is real. It can isolate you, exhaust you, turn you into a target for defensive anger, cause you to lose contact with your center. But it doesn't have to. Not if you learn to carry your awareness consciously. Not if you develop strength to see without compulsion to fix. Not if you remain true to your perception while allowing others their own process of waking up. The gift and the challenge are the same thing. The question is only whether you learn to handle the gift with enough wisdom that it doesn't become overwhelming. Whether you'll develop patience and boundaries and self-knowledge necessary to be clear without being crushed by your clarity. And perhaps most importantly, whether you'll find others who can see as you see, because they exist, other people who live in this space of perceiving more than most, of sensing what's hidden, knowing what's unspoken. When you find these people, when you can be fully seen by someone who doesn't need you to be less perceptive to feel comfortable, that's when the danger transforms into something beautiful, because you realize you're not alone. You're not crazy, you're not broken. You're simply awake in a world that mostly sleeps, and there are others awake too. Together, without force or pressure or urgency, you can hold space for consciousness to gradually spread, like dawn breaking slowly over a sleeping city. This is the hope within the challenge. Your clear seeing, when held wisely, becomes not a burden you carry alone, but a light you offer others, gently, patiently, allowing them to approach when ready, if they're ever ready. And if they never are, that's their right. Your job isn't to wake them up. Your job is simply to remain awake yourself. Keep seeing clearly while learning to live peacefully with what you see. If you're ready to continue this journey of conscious awareness, to learn how to see without being overwhelmed by what you perceive, subscribe. This is just the beginning of understanding how to carry the gift of clear sight. The danger is real, but so is the possibility. The possibility that you learn to be conscious without being consumed, that you see deeply without drowning in what you perceive, that you carry your awareness as a gift rather than a burden. And that is the art of living with eyes wide open in a world that prefers to keep them closed.